...2024 will be the year of AI, and particularly will be the year of generative AI. And again, last year we have a lot of discussion about OpenAI. Again, OpenAI probably has been the headlines of 2023. There is something that is happening related to this specific topic that is super relevant, and this is what is called the Indian answer to ChatGPT. That is what is called Project Indus. Project Indus is something that's been launched by a big Indian company that is Tech Mahindra. And today I have the pleasure to have with me Nikhil Malhotra, who is a global head at Makers Lab of Tech Mahindra. Hi, Nikhil.
Hi, Alberto. How are you?
Very good, very good. It's a pleasure to have you back with us. Again, since probably it's been past a year, so I think it's a good touch base point to understand what has been the evolution. Again, we are super excited to hear more about this Project Indus. I think is very, very important to properly assess and understand what are the reasons behind, and more broadly to understand what Tech Mahindra is about too, in terms of open innovation, and more overall Mahindra, that is a big, large similar player. So probably maybe we can start from Mahindra, then go into Tech Mahindra, and then start digging into this Project Indus that we're super excited to hear from.
Sure, absolutely. And good to be back. We can probably start from Mahindra. I think Mahindra is a global organization, has a lot of businesses. Today, we rank some of, if you think we are the largest manufacturers of tractors by volume. If you've seen an XUV 400, or if you've seen some of our cars on your roads, you know that we have an automotive division, we have farms division, we do loads of business over here. Tech Mahindra is a small part of Mahindra's, which is basically, and that's the IT arm or the technology arm for Tech Mahindra, from where I belong, and I'm the Chief Innovation Officer and the Global Head of Makers Lab in that particular company, which is Tech Mahindra. Now, I think when we started this year in 2024, there were 2 or 3 big bets that were going on. I think one was obviously AI, artificial intelligence. The second was sustainability, and how do we make whatever technology that we make more sustainable. And third, obviously, which has been the theme around the year, what do you mean by open innovation? Can you collaborate more? Can you get more startups involved in terms of what you're doing? Can you get more kids involved, right, in terms of what you're doing? And can you create that talent and leadership pipeline? Right? So that's generally been the vision and strategy for not just the group. It's also been, for my group, and it just percolates down. And these are just pillars of our vision. The pillars of vision are, if you know Mahindra Rise. Rise is one of the biggest pillars of vision. It just means driving positive change to the society, which means if we rise, I have to make you rise as well, because you deal with me in some way or the other, as a vendor or as a customer. It's about alternative thinking, right? Think differently every single day, and think differently about solutions, think differently even about a problem that you have. And it's about driving that positivity in terms of what we do, not just for businesses, but also society at large, right? And that's very, very important for all of us. And those are the ethos that are built within our cultural set. The vision for us, when 2024 started, and our MD Anish, of course, for Mahindra setup, was that we have to drive tech. I think this business is now going to be tech-led, so we actually have to be tech-led as well in terms of what we do. From a group's perspective, there needs to be a kind of synergistic way in terms of how we move forward. We should not, we we're very happy in terms of what we do in different places, like a tech company or an auto company, but can we have that synergies in terms of what we drive forward? Talent and leadership pipeline is one of our utmost importance in terms of what we wish to do, and how do we connect to startups? How do we do open innovation? How do we collaboration is very, very important for us. Project Indus happened to be something on my lap when Sam Altman was in India, and somebody raised a challenge to him saying, "Can India produce a Chat GPT like OpenAI?" Right, and the amount of money that what OpenAI of course has spent, and they're the pioneers in the field. Can India do the same, and can India replicate the same? So our ex-CEO, of course, CP Gurnani, wrote a tweet at about 11:30 p.m. To his challenge, and he just said, "Challenge accepted." And that's how we accepted that challenge in terms of what we do. And that challenge came to me, being the Chief Innovation Officer, what we wish to do and how we want to do it. So there were n number of things I could have done, right? So I could have used the model. I could have taken the model of Llama. I could have taken the model of Chat GPT. There are hundreds of models which are running around in the world. We thought we'll do something very different, Alberto, right? So if you look at India, for example, right? So India is a very diverse country. It has, officially, it has got 23 mother tongues that people speak, and also 1,645 dialects or ways in which the language is spoken. If you go just deeper down in India, these 23 languages remain the same, but the way the dialect or people speak different words, that is about 19,200 different dialects. Some of these 19,200 different dialects are spoken in small corners of the country. Some of them are spoken by 100,000, 200,000 people. Some of them even spoken by millions and 2 millions of people, right? So what we took as a challenge was, we said we'll build the model grounds up like ChatGPT, but we'll take in the language which is spoken by maximum number of people, which is Hindi. And hence the name Indus, because Indus comes from the name of Indus civilization. It's also about a name that resonates well with India. And we started with Hindi because Hindi is about 615 million speakers in the world. And that is more than people who consider English as their first language. So it was very apt for us to take Hindi. But when we went into the deeper roots of Hindi, that Hindi is now spoken by in 37 different ways. So 37 to 40 different dialects come in Hindi. So we thought that our first model would be built using Hindi and its dialects. It would be a completely Hindi-based model. It will have no tokens of English. It will be completely tokenized, or words would be only of Hindi. And the model will start doing whatever ChatGPT does, and the world knows what ChatGPT does. I'm very happy that, and the date set for that release of model was kept on 19th of December. Happened to be our ex-CEO's birthday, and also his last day in the organization. So this was very well timed and whatever processed, right? So we kept it on 19th of December, and we released.
So you came on time for giving him a gift.
Yes, absolutely, and that was his gift that we gave in. So we released that model, Alberto, and we released that internally as a beta. Today, our model is about 539 million parameters and about 10 billion tokens. When I say 10 billion tokens, 10 billion subwords of Hindi and its dialects. We may probably be the largest source of these tokens in Hindi in terms of what we've done. And these are pure tokens, right? So a lot of people, what they do is they take an English model, they put Hindi on top of it. This is purely built on only Hindi and stuff. So that's the story of Indus, right? So in terms of what we did.
So the challenge has been accepted. The challenge has been, I would say, accomplished. And now
it's sort of accomplished. I think we still have time. I think we still have 2 months in which we will accomplish it and release it.
Okay, let's see. I think we will definitely take a look at what you've been doing and then see at the end if the promise is been. But I think it makes a lot of sense. And then to broaden up the question is, again, India is a continent, is a world by itself. And so probably, yes, its own needs, but also I believe as a gigantic opportunities and gigantic potential. So help us and help our audience to understand the potential of India, because I think sometimes we forget it is probably one of the largest pillars of the world.
No, I agree. Completely agree with you, and absolutely. And I think that it's kind of a you remember we talked last time as well. It's kind of that it's that fringe of the world where wherever you have not seen a use case, you will find it in India, right? So now you talk about languages. There wouldn't be any more languages in the world than it is in in one country. So you've got almost all of the data, right? It has to be collected, it has to be grained and fine grained, and so on and so forth. So I think that makes India very special in terms of what we do from a technology standpoint.
Yeah. And broaden up the discussion to, again, from Project Indus to the larger innovation approach of Tech Mahindra and Mahindra again. Can you refer to some example of innovation that you were able to put on the market, leveraging the collaboration with startups? What are the most interesting Indian startups that might have a potential to actually be solution providers also for company outside of India? Again, help us to understand with some examples of what we should look at looking at India.
Yeah, so I think India is brimming with AI startups at this time, Alberto, right? So, but I'll give you a few examples of how we. If you remember last time we talked, we said that the World Economic Forum recognizes us as one of those open innovation areas, right? So we tend to open up the innovation. We don't keep it scuttled and hidden inside. We want more and more people to collaborate, more and more minds to come in terms of what they want to do. Only for I can give you one very, very interesting example for Indus. When Indus was launched, right? So this is one of the examples. When Indus was launched, it was a kind of an event for India where people started patting their backs and saying, "Look, we can challenge," and so on and so forth. A young kid from a very small tier 2 village writes into our CEO and says, "I want to work only on Indus." And he's a 12th standard student. He's not finished his graduation. And our CEO, ex-CEO, CP passes that contact to me. And he said, "When do I start?" And I said, "You can start as an intern, you can start and work with us and so on and so forth. But you're a 12th standard student. So normally we give internship after you've done graduation and so on and so forth. But this guy lands up in my place where I have the lab next day, takes a place with his father, comes into the lab and says, 'That's the only thing that I want to do. I just want to prove that we can build the model. I will help you in any case possible, but I want this openness in terms of what we do,' right? So that actually gives you the idea of the openness in terms of what we do from an innovation standpoint. Now, based on this, we also needed a lot of help from. So for us, open innovation means three facets of a country, right? So it means academia, it means corporates and startups, and it means the government. If these three pillars continue to work as trifecta, right, the country continues to work and progress. So we tend to have connections with all of them, right? So some of the work that we are doing with academia is, of course, in terms of how we make the models more ethical, in terms of how we remove some of the deep fakes from the models, in terms of research on quantum machine learning that we are trying to do with academia. And these are the IITs and the ICERs and some of the small colleges of the country where we work in. And that's where the innovation is just being incubated, right? So this is just the incubation stage. With the government, a lot of work that we have done in 2022 during COVID times, or which we are doing now, right, is basically to help solve some of the problems that the government faces, right, in terms of AI, in terms of integration of solutions, and so on and so forth. The other thing which is very important is the startups, and we need to give them that space, right? So we are also advisors or part of the Atal Incubation Center, which is a kind of a movement that the Indian government, or basically the think tank of India, started saying every new startup that comes in actually gets incubated in AIC, which is Atal Incubation Centers, and the AIC takes care of the first 2 or 3 years of how the startup progresses forward, what's the kind of funding mechanism, how should they take the market, so on and so forth. So all of that AIC, we actually coordinate and collaborate with, right? So these startups include startups on robotics. And these robotics are very different. They're not industrial robotics, but they are robotics like, for example, India also has a lot of workers who work on these main holes and sewers, and they have to pick that, can we automate their work itself? There are autonomous cars-based startups which are working in. There are Hyperloop-based startups that are working in India. And then there are very core AI-based services startups that we connect with in terms of the Indian subcontinent. Some interesting startups that are coming in India are also a combination of quantum and AI. I can give you one startup called Artificial Brain, which is basically working with us. There's a very interesting startup called Boson QSci, which is actually a startup which is working with us in terms of quantum simulation and how do we do this, and very interesting work that we're doing in some parts like Australia. So we are trying to work, and I would say that we are trying to do certain drug-based modeling in Australia with some of their startups and academia. We are trying to also look at how can we do weather prediction in Australia better. So there's a whole conundrum in terms of what we do. Largely, if you consider it, maximum startups would be found in AI at this point because it's the buzzword. The second, you would find quantum has become another buzzword. So you have startups in quantum computing, you have startups in quantum sensing, quantum education that are coming up, and they are collaborating with us. And the third is possibly in areas of robotics, AR, VR, and so on and so forth. Right? So these are different startups. So we have a very healthy startup culture. And we also have a very healthy culture inside the lab where a lot of these college students come in and they participate in these projects as interns. Right? And that's a very important thing for us. And that's where the talent and leadership pipeline really comes through. So at any point in time, my lab supports, and we don't have one lab, we have about 5 and 6 across the world. We support almost about 70 to 100 interns every year in terms of what they're doing on the cutting edge, right? So India and abroad taken into account. So that's what we do in terms of open innovation.
One thing that probably has changed since the time we spoke is Metaverse. I remember that was one on the top list again 2 years ago. Everything was Metaverse, and now people are mostly striking down or hiding. Yeah. What is your take on Metaverse? How do you see that?
So look, Albert, I can say it from the side of a practitioner, for somebody and for someone whose team has almost produced production level use cases of Metaverse to about the extent of 16 to 20 customers, right? So 16 to 20 customers in the last 1.5 years have been served by us. Now, it's on the decline. You're absolutely right. But I think the decline has been largely on the consumer Metaverse side. And what we have seen as a decline from Metaverse point of view is the bragging rights that people and companies used to say, hey, look, I'm the first in the Metaverse. You can come in and view it. You can come in and do some stuff. That has significantly gone down. And that's why you see a dip in terms of how the Metaverse does. But whereas the industrial Metaverse still continues to happen. Right? And when I say industrial Metaverse, I'm talking about digital twins. People still need digital twins to as a virtual replica of a physical system so that they can monitor and manage it correctly. People still need digital twins to actually find out what's going to happen to a piece of land or a piece of machinery if I am, let's say, talking about factory of the future. So what has happened is that Metaverse portion has now come into something called factory of the future, right? So people are now start talking about that's the new revolution for factories. And that's what we call it as industrial Metaverse. Consumer Metaverse may not grow to that extent, is my idea. Because I think that was more in bragging perspective. That was more in terms of the opening of the, kind of a portal where people would go in, feel things, look at a 3D world. And then you see certain challenges that have come up in consumer Metaverse, right? So there have been cases where people have said that they don't feel safe in that Metaverse. You don't feel safe while talking to strangers in that Metaverse, right? So that portion is down. But I think industrial Metaverse continues to work and continues to chug along in terms of what we do, right? So as a terminology, Metaverse may have gone down, but as a process, as an industrial process, it still continues to be there. Right?
Yeah, I agree. Again, currently the hype is everything is on AI and generative AI. It's currently is what people want. Again, there are some hypes. I believe that some hypes are based on trends. So some be upwards and downwards. But again, there are some substantial needs behind that I think they're going to stay. And I believe some of the needs behind the Metaverse, as you mentioned, the industrial application, digital twins are super solid needs. And actually, there is a lot of evolution on that side, as well as we go a bit beyond the hype of AI, some very solid needs are going to stay. Again, let me pick your future technologies brain and use it. Again, if we need to look at 2024 and 2025, what are the main things that are about to happen or they will be hot that we are currently a bit off radar?
I think first thing, and I would not call 2024 because we're living in it, but 2025 will see, as per me, these following changes. I think number one, the hype of generative AI would go down in the sense that we have seen today. And the reason for that is that a lot of people would soon realize, and organizations would soon realize, that there's a large amount of money that they're spending in terms of doing some work that could have been done in a very different way from GenAI. And of course, some work cannot be done, but some of the work can be done outside of GenAI. So that hype will go down. Second, people would soon realize that AI in its current avatar is not sustainable. If you remember, Alberto, about 2 or 3 years back, your and my chat was, please don't travel, reduce your carbon footprint by traveling less on planes. Well, AI seems to have trumped all of that, right? They are now creating carbon and compute power, or let's say resources, 57 times more than a human would actually travel on a plane, right? So that's a very different perspective on what tech has changed. And focus of some of the AI engineers or AI researchers has to go in terms of finding out a sustainable means of AI. Now, what does that sustainable means of AI mean? I am not sure, but for me, at this point, there are two ways of doing this. One is, of course, get inspired from the human brain, make it much more easier, just like a human brain does. A human brain does everything in 25 watts, whereas if I have to train a model, it actually takes about 1 gigawatt of power, right? So there's no difference. There's a huge difference in terms of, there's no comparison in terms of what we're trying to do. Number two change that may happen is quantum will start rearing its head in 2025 in terms of some production use cases. I know I may be early for certain cases, but there are certain annealing based use cases already there. Quantum security and quantum optimization to a certain level may come in certain use cases, and will become more, companies will become more vocal in terms of what they're trying to do on quantum computing. That's the second change. Biomedicine is due for a big change, and I think 2025 would also see a very rapid change in terms of how we look at diseases, how we look at drugs, how we actually look at even some of the mechanisms of how we deal with body, right? So at this point in time, there are two formats or maybe three formats of medicine: the allopathic way, stop everything before it occurs; the homeopathic way, in which terms of let it go with, I'll travel with you as a stream and let me see if the body gets cured. And the Ayurvedic way, which says, let nature cure you in some format or the other, right? So some other format of medicine, or maybe a combination of these, I think the world would start looking at in terms of biomedicine. I think robotics in medicine, or nanorobots will actually start gaining prominence. I think 2025 would also see that we've already done human genome sequencing. We will also look at how some of that human genome sequencing that we've done can be used to customize it for personal gains, right? So what do I do with my medicine? How do I take care of, let's say, things and security? Cybersecurity is due for a huge change in 2025. Cybersecurity will see a major change in terms of what we do for quantum, how we actually deal with quantum, and so on and so forth. So that is going to be a massive shift in terms of what we do. Construction may seem to, the way we build colonies and societies today, it's either a linear way in terms of, or it's either an expansive way where we grow out like a circle, or it's like a linear way in terms of what we build in flats and structures like that. That is bound for a very big change in 2025, right? Because we are buckling our infrastructure in major cities. I think we need to find a very different mechanism in terms of what we're doing. Aerial modes of communication, right? Robo taxis or aerial taxis. You may see few of green shoots there in terms of startups that may come, right? So these are largely things that you may see in 2025. I'm very hopeful. I think space travel. I'm hopeful about space. I'm hopeful about what we can do, but I'm very hopeful in terms of what tech can play in the next couple of years.
No, I agree. Again, I was driving my daughter back to Oxford. She studied physics, and she was telling me about quantum applied to cryptography. And I think that's a big potential revenue of innovation. So I agree with you that obviously AI is always hype. There is a lot of substance, but I think I really agree on the sustainability angle and the need to be becoming more sustainable and also to be perceived in a way that is more usable. Quantum, totally agree with you. Application to biomedicine, cybersecurity, nanotechnologies, and then again transportation, construction. I think probably we won't see again because this kind of sector is very, very slow to apply, but we see something that at least can show the way that we be taking.
I don't know whether that change will happen in 2025 or not, Alberto, but I think for a long period of time as a human race, right, we have actually tried to suppress or move. I call it the anti-nature move, right? So we try and do everything against the nature, right? So you want to build houses, we want to capture land, we want to create, ammunitions and whatever, and guns and so on and so forth. I think maybe there is time in the next 2-3 years to take the essence of technology and move with nature, right? So I think, and that's beneficial for the humankind. I can tell you safely, none of the capitals of the world today are devoid of pollution. You land up anywhere, you either get a runny nose or you get your throat choked, right? Or you get some other ailments, right? And the world's actually suffering with. The reason for that is we've tried to suppress nature in some way or the other. But I don't think we have a handle on nature. I think if we can move with nature, right, using tech, so that's why AI becomes more sustainable when it actually derives its essence from human brain. It's natural how we think, or how I and you think. Quantum is a part of the universe, so we can utilize that. Nanorobots, yes, it's kind of an inversion, but it's also again a nano part in terms of how robotics can work out. So I think we've got to move with nature rather than against nature. So I'd see that change in 25, maybe in 2030. Where humankind actually evolves into a kind of much more intelligent species to work with nature rather than against nature, right? So sort of that story.
Also because, Nikhil, I think there is no alternative here. I think the nature has really told us that the way we have been behaving thus far is no longer sustainable. We need to find a better way. So if we want to survive, we need to move with nature, because again, the phase where we are going against nature, I think, is definitely beyond us. So, Nikhil, thank you so much for this conversation. I think also, as usual, was super inspiring, and looking forward to sit with you in 2025 to check which of your forecasts are in the way as you see it today. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you.